turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone and connect. I'm glad that none of you have officially melted since the last time we saw each other. If you're anywhere in those hot ranges, the temperatures in this last month, incredible. But we're here now, and so I'm really excited to be with all of you this afternoon. The agenda for today, I wanted to give folks an idea that was there anyone who wanted to add anything to the agenda real quick? Our objectives for this particular meeting, we're going to do some of the follow-up pieces from June, kind of recap a little bit. We're going to take an opportunity to review the results of the initial survey as well, and then identify next steps. We have about 2 hours going into this meeting, and so it will be fast and furious at some places, but I would imagine that at any point, if any of you want to add something and slow down the pace and get clarification on anything, please, I encourage you to do so and just stop me. And with that, for introductions, I want to encourage everyone to, one, go ahead and put your pronouns within the chat, and we'll put that in there. And then if you don't mind a little bit of connectivity here, if you don't mind putting down one thing that you've already done this summer that you have enjoyed. I think that'd be a nice way to kind of remind ourselves that we're in the middle of summer, given this work, the work that we're doing. So go ahead and put your pronouns in there, and then also one thing that you've enjoyed doing this summer already as our introduction. Ooh, I already see people gardening. I love that. Would anybody, as you're doing that and reading each other's responses, would anybody like to add anything to the agenda this afternoon?
Was I supposed to have a phone number, Heather?
I want to also welcome our interpreters this afternoon. We have both Mark and Margaret joining us to do some Spanish language interpretation. If you would like to, at the bottom of your screen, it should say interpreter, and then you can select English or Spanish. So go ahead and select English or Spanish, and then you'll be able to connect with our interpreter services this afternoon. I also want to welcome both Heather Owens, Christy Hudson, and then Liz Garce from OHA, who will help support the team today, the meeting today. These folks, if you want to reach out to them via the chat, if you're having any type of technical difficulties, I encourage you to do so. Probably for technical issues today, reach out to either Heather or Liz, okay? All right, everyone. So the first thing that we have on our agenda is we wanted to kind of touch base on consensus making. You know, part of the charter review that has happened in the last couple months, we'll get to the charter in a bit here, but part of the decision making piece that this group, that the partnership wanted to utilize, is doing things in a consensus-based model. And so what we decided to do was kind of do a quick practice run through on what consensus model voting or decision making actually looks like. So if Christy or whoever's running the slides today could pull up that first slide on consensus-based decision making, that'd be great. So what we're going to do is kind of run through the basics of how do we make decisions as a large group of 20 plus folks, right? And to remind folks, I am not a voting member. I'm just the facilitator today. And I'm also reminding folks that our OHA staff, they are not voting members as well. So this really is kind of your way of deciding how to move forward when initiatives or proposals are put forward. So what we thought would be a good practice exercise would be to think about the next time we meet, we want to offer you a beverage, but we can only provide one beverage. So what we're going to ask is that we do a thumbs voting type of consensus model. So for this, if you agree to the beverage that we select, you do a thumbs up, right? If you have questions or a comment or need more and want to discuss more, you're going to do a thumbs sideways. And if you are not into this at all, you don't like the choices, you're going to do a thumbs down, right? Can we pull up that slide that has all of what I just said? I don't see it. So.
Are you not seeing it?
No.
How about now?
Beautiful, thank you. Yep. So again, we're going to provide you a beverage. That's what's on the table. It's going to be coffee or tea. If you're good with that, it's going to be a thumbs up. If you're not so great, sideways. And if you're like, yeah, I don't think this is a good idea, you're going to do a thumbs down, right? And then if after 3 rounds of voting and talking about this, we don't come to consensus, then we're really going to move forward with the 80-20 rule, okay? So that's basically 80% of the votes going one way. We're gonna go ahead and move forward. Does that make sense to folks?
Hey, New.
Yes.
I think the idea was that we would only have one. So like we need to have a proposal that, okay, we're gonna have coffee.
Right.
And then we have to do it from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the proposal we're gonna go forward with is, since I'm the facilitator, I get to choose between the two. I propose that at the next meeting, we will select tea. Actually, I shouldn't really be putting the proposal forward. I should actually ask one of you to put the put it forward since I'm not a voting member. So why don't we, sorry,
Oh my God.
Go backwards a little bit. Would anybody like to put a proposal for the beverage forward to the group? Jennifer, okay, thank you. Rachel,
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Rachel, go for it.
I propose that we serve coffee at the next meeting.
Okay, so on the table right now for the group, for the partnership, Rachel has proposed that there has been a proposal that we serve coffee at the next meeting. So what we're gonna do right now is I'm gonna ask you, if you're able to turn on your camera, great. If not, go ahead and put it in the chat. I know not everybody is able to do video. So go ahead, on the count of 3, we're going to either vote thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down, okay? So in the chat, just say up, sideways, or down, okay? So go ahead, 1, 2, 3. And then if our staff can take a quick look. Oh, I'm seeing a split here.
I couldn't see Connie.
So if you're on the partnership, go ahead. I see a couple ups. I see several downs. So what we'll do in this model of consensus decision making, yeah, I see enough downs that we're going to stop, right? That we're going to go back and say, for those of you who feel like we should go a different route, if you don't mind unmuting and kind of stating either what your thoughts are or questions or comments are about the proposal to have coffee at the next meeting.
Can it be iced coffee?
Can it be iced coffee? That would be another variation. I think that's a good point, Connie. Iced coffee is also on the table. So that might be something we need to consider, iced coffee. So what I'm hearing you say is you're not completely opposed to coffee. It's just you would like potentially to have iced coffee.
Iced coffee, decaf coffee. I mean, there's a lot of variations we could
Okay.
do this with.
Yes. Okay, so we need,
Turkish coffee.
yes. Okay.
Okay, I'm not going to be a smarty pants. I'm going to listen.
No, you're good. This is part of that process, right? There are variations when things are proposed, and that's a perfect example. So thank you. Other thoughts on?
I think Timur was also a sideways. Maybe he wants to share some thoughts.
Yes, please.
Well, hello everyone, Timur from Slavic Community Center. The reason I put down sideways was because of the stated reasons. There could be different variations of coffee. We can talk about, like decaf. Some people might not, want the caffeine in their body.
Mm,
So just, discussion to have more options.
more
for
options.
coffee. Yeah. Or potentially swapping it to tea.
Okay.
Or even water.
Thank you. So possibly more tea, more other options, excuse me, other options. I think that was also mentioned in the comments from talk. What other questions do folks have on the option of whether it be coffee or something else? For those of you who were completely, not just sideways, but completely on the downside, what questions might you have, or options or thoughts? Have some of you been convinced either way to move towards coffee, or definitely need more options? So part of this process is really that piece of like, if I didn't agree with what the proposal was, how do I get more information to get me to a place where I can live with coffee being offered, right? So thoughts? Somebody said that visual examples might help sway individuals. Okay. So as a group, if we're trying to open up dialogue and discussion, and sometimes it is about swaying folks to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking when I proposed coffee, when the proposal for coffee was there. Would this help you move more towards agreement? There was the option of iced coffee, other types of coffee. Can we bring our own beverage? Okay, so what we're going to do is going to go ahead and we're going to vote one more time for voting members of the partnership. We're going to ask you to move forward in thumbs up, sideways, or down. Let's see if this has swayed the group in any way. So go ahead and select your reactions. Thumbs up. I see more thumbs up. More thumbs up. Oh, I see a thumbs down. Okay. So I see more thumbs up, movement towards that direction. And I do see, I want to acknowledge that I do see a couple thumbs down. Now, do folks want to address that? I think I saw that from Jennifer. Do you need more information? And then I also saw that from somebody else, I thought. So I'm going to open up the floor for those of you on the partnership that had said thumbs down. Do you want to open up more thoughts or ideas or options? What's your thinking?
This is Jennifer.
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay. I personally just don't really like coffee, but I wouldn't mind just not drinking anything. And like, if everybody else wants coffee, I wouldn't mind like it being coffee.
Okay. Thank you, Naima. Jennifer, go ahead.
Oh, and I just thought people brought up really good arguments, I guess, in favor of just the more options or a different option, particularly like the caffeine piece, and you know, people don't like it, so that's why I had said no.
Okay. Would you say, for those of you who were thumbs down, would you say that you now that you've offered up those thoughts and comments, that you're probably maybe more to the sideways, where
Was that for the thumbs down people, did you say?
yes.
I mean, for the purpose of this exercise, sure, yes, I could be swayed to be the sideways.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. So that was just a little practice. I don't know that we need to do a third round to make sure that everybody gets to the same page, but I think that that particular piece kind of gives you an example. There's lots of different variations of the thumb voting model. And so what we wanted to do is encourage folks to think about how we're going to use consensus-based decision-making as part of the partnership's foundation, as part of the structure of how we do things. We encourage you folks to, as you think through proposals that are put forward, think about what are the options, what are the variations of that. We don't always have to agree like, yes, it's coffee all the way, but maybe there are variations that we can do. Is there going to be options for decaf? Is there going to be options for ice? So again, just giving folks the opportunity to ask those questions and then rethinking it and then moving towards a closer consensus model of, yes, I'm in agreement with that. I can live with that, right? As a non-coffee drinker myself, I would much prefer tea. However, I can live without coffee, right? Even if it was offered. So again, thinking about what does that look like as we make decisions. So thank you for working through that quick exercise with us. So the next piece on our agenda today is we're going to look at kind of the follow-up from our last June meeting, thinking about the charter development. Part of that was pieces that are still in development. We know that there's some work that has been done, kind of conversations within Basecamp. Again, that's the platform that we've used to kind of upload materials and information to this group. We also recognize that within Basecamp, some of you, that might be a lot of information. So, you know, engaging it in that way may or may not be your most favorite mode of interacting with folks. And so kind of just acknowledging that we can also do it another way is really important. Part of the charter development that decisions we need to make would be the use of quorums. You know, how many people need to come together before there's a quorum. So those type of things we need to, again, think about the consensus-based decision model. Is that the direction we want to go to? Other piece would be the inclusion of public meetings, right? How do we include the public within conversations that we have in the partnership? And then expectations for members. So for the proposal here, the proposal would be, you know, do we want to have a small work group come together to flesh out details of the charter? Now, I reviewed the charter before this meeting, in preparation for this meeting, and I feel that you folks have gotten, you're really close to being complete. I would encourage you folks not to be overly concerned that it's not perfect, because I think that when we get into that analysis paralysis piece, it could slow things down. But the proposal really would be, do we have some folks who would like to step forward and flesh out the details of the charter? I would imagine that this group could be convened with folks from across the region. You know, if you represent like a region, it can be, you know, some of you from community-based organizations, some of you from the health industry. So it could be a really nice makeup of this particular partnership. Can we have some thoughts about a small work group kind of coming together and kind of really firming up the charter to present back to this group? I know that some folks had stepped up and started that process in the beginning.
Excuse me, New.
Yes, please.
This is Interpreter Mark. Could you please check to see if Callie is connected? Trying to connect with her on her cell phone, but she's not picking up.
Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Mark. Let's see. Heather, okay, I'm going to ask Heather or Christy to reach out to Callie. Do we see her on?
I see 1541 number, and I know that that's frequently what she'll call in from, but it's not the number we have. And I did try to call myself and was not able to get through. So, yep.
Okay. Did you get that, Mark?
Didn't quite hear that. Sorry.
Maybe Heather, if you can reach out to Mark in the chat.
Heather, can you hear me? This is Margaret. Heather?
I hear you, Margaret.
Oh, okay.
I hear you.
Maybe she doesn't answer the phone because she's listening somewhere else, or maybe the computer or something, to Mark's translation. I just texted Mark saying if he could warn Callie to answer the phone at 1:30 so I can take my turn. And I can just simultaneously interpret into the phone for her. Wasn't that the plan? Heather?
Yes. Margaret, do you still have my phone number? We can, if you want to call me directly, we can talk offline.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that you're able to connect with Callie. We know that just having interpreter services is so important to this process. And thank you, everyone else, for your patience as we work through that option for Callie. All right. So let me stop and recalibrate where we're at. We were at the place of where we were talking about a proposal to have a small group of folks come together, a small work group to flesh out the details of the charter. Is that something that you folks
New, this is Stan.
Yes, please.
And I think it'd be a very good idea for a small group to go through it in detail and then report back to the group as a whole. And I'd be glad to be part of that small group if a small group were to be formed.
Great. Thank you, Stan. Thank you for stepping forward for that. We have one taker.
No, you might have already addressed this, and I'm sorry if I missed it. Can you give us an idea of the time commitment involved in participating in a small committee?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And again, this is you all can utilize as much or as little time as you want, right? But based on what I was reviewing, I would say if the group were to meet, I would say at a minimum of 2 hours before our next meeting. So that would maybe mean 2 one-hour meetings. And I'm throwing that out there as the facilitator. I'm not, but that would be my suggestion. I believe we all have sat on groups before where it's those detailed pieces and having the opportunity to sit and discuss with each other that help really flesh out the foundation of a charter. And so my suggestion or observation would be that it would really be about 2 hours, maybe with an additional hour of all of you doing some quick review before coming to that meeting.
And it would be a facilitated discussion?
We can make that available. I have time within this work to sit with this particular committee to get it done. Yeah, I could sit with.
I would totally be willing to do that.
Thank you. So I have Stan, I have Susan.
I'm happy to be included in trying to get to the meeting. I just feel really busy. So if it doesn't work out scheduling wise, I'd like to be a solid maybe, if that works.
Solid maybe, I like that.
Like I do my best, yeah.
And Amy, you're in Southern Oregon region, right?
Yeah.
Generally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And thank you, Timur, I see you. So I have 4 folks, and I would suggest maybe 1 more person for 5. I think that's actually a really good number to work with. So anybody who we like a nice solid representation from the group, from the partnership. So I have Stan, Susan from Peace Health, Amy, and Timur. Would anybody else like to volunteer at this time? Okay, so I will bring this forward to folks and we will work on maybe sending out a Google, what do you call those Google times where we can figure out which is the best time to meet as a group for these 4 folks. And then they will bring this back to the larger partnership in the August meeting. Thank you, Doodle, that's what it's called, a doodle poll.
New, this is Stan again. You might think about Ian. I think Ian had some interest in this subject. That might be a 5th one. You might check with him.
Okay, I will. For sure, thank you.
And I know Alicia had also chimed in.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna put, we have 2 possible folks, both Ian and Alicia. Great. Oh, Rachel, you just got yourself all in there. Thank you. Without being voluntold. Thank you. Nice. Thank you. Okay. I have a lot of screens open up, folks. I apologize. That's why I'm kind of moving y'all around my screens here. Okay, so the next piece would be kind of finalizing, excuse me, not finalizing. How about an update about the funding and finance and then office hours? I'm going to turn that particular piece over to was there anyone who wanted to represent the finance and funding, or maybe that's Christy, and then office hours, maybe that's Liz?
Yeah, I'm hoping actually Stan might be able to share a little bit. We had a small group that met last Friday to kind of dig in a little bit. Stan, do you want to report out briefly on some of the highlights from that conversation?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The small group was me and Ian,
Este
Christy.
pequeño grupo era para mí.
Can you hear me okay, everyone?
¿Me están escuchando bien?
It was me and Ian, and
Era
Christy
yo,
was there, and
Cristian también
Lou was
estaba,
on there, and one other lady, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. As we talked
más
about
una
funding
señora que
and
no me
finance.
recuerdo su nombre.
And in going through the funding and finance, we
I'm sorry, Stan, to interrupt. Margaret, can I have you mute yourself, because we're hearing you in the interpretation process. Thank you. Go ahead, Stan.
Okay. We did come to a conclusion. We met for about an hour that it would be good for the partnership to consider having a funding and finance committee. The funding and finance committee would review and work with those involved with the funding and report back as needed to the partnership as a whole, where all decisions would be made by the partnership. The funding and finance would be able to give them input. There was a concern that there needs to be staffing for a committee of this type, so that it would be a way of putting tires on the car, so to speak, going forward. Kara was on there as well for that meeting. So as far as the funding and finance, the question come up as far as on the charter, can we really have a funding and finance committee until we have a charter, and what is the process in doing there? What is the process for starting a funding and finance committee? So that's a brief overview, and any questions, I'd be glad to answer as I can. There was another discussion we had as far as on who would be on the funding and finance committee. And there was the thought brought up, it would be good if it could also be a diverse, so that it would not be just 2 or 3 from one area, but that there would be an overall way of taking a sampling from the entire partnership, so that coming back to the partnership, there would be a higher possibility that the decisions being suggested or proposals being made would mirror the entire partnership, thereby perhaps helping with the decision-making process.
Thank you, Stan. Folks have any questions for Stan on some of those detailed pieces? I think some of the good pieces of discussion that I heard during that brief meeting was really, kind of working back a little bit, just thinking about the foundational pieces of the charter, and then having that done, and then moving to breaking up smaller opportunities for folks within this partnership to connect to the next piece, which may be funding, right? I know that it's hard to kind of think about funding before you do some of the more foundational pieces, but I think all of it's kind of coming to a head, which is exciting. And it can also feel like I'm not sure what I'm volunteering for, right? And so I think that that's where this group may need some time to think about some of the foundational pieces of, we're at that part of the partnership where you're still learning and forming and norming and all of those pieces of coming together as a new group, a new team, if you will. And so what does that look like, and how do I jump in if I'm not sure what I'm jumping into? So I appreciate some of those clarifying pieces that Stan brought up, and even in, how much time is this going to take if I volunteer for committee, right? Because nothing's more scary than volunteering for a committee without knowing how much time it involves, right? And so again, we encourage you to ask those questions, because this new formation, and I think one of the aha moments that folks on that call had was basically, this is your way, this is your committee, excuse me if I keep calling it a committee, but this is your partnership in how you want to move forward with the work, right? And it's very different than any work group that you've maybe been on or team. And so we encourage you to kind of process that and work through that. And if it's uncomfortable and if it feels a little mind-boggling, I think that's kind of the purpose of something new and something different. And so we encourage you to ask those questions and move that process together. Do folks have any comments about that?
That was a really good summary of, I think, how a lot of us are feeling.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's hard too because, if I may, folks, when we form this new group, it's really about, there is no hierarchy, right? We're all here in it together. And so with a lack of somebody stepping up and saying, I'm going to lead this process. And I know that folks look to Christy and Kara to say, what's the next step? Really, we want you all to inform us of the next step. And I think that's why you may see us sit and just be quiet because we really want to hear from you. And I think that's the new thing that we're really looking for. And it does feel like we got to do something, but we really want you to lead that process, right? And it may take a couple of you, and it may take a little more time to feel our way through that. All right. Any more pieces on that we need to cover for Funding and Finance Committee? I would imagine that there will be opportunities to think about bringing another group, perhaps a different collective group from this partnership to step forward and look at some of the funding and finance pieces that are going to be offered. So the last piece here would be for follow-up for June would be office hours. Do we want to report out on office hours and what came about, what questions and comments came about from that?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that new. So
Thank you.
kind of in response and in support of the uncertainty that I think this group is experiencing, we held a series of open office hours, which was really an opportunity for you all to come and just pop in, say hi, ask your questions, relationship build, all of that. We held 4 office hours. One, we had to cancel at the last minute because of technical difficulties, so I apologize if that created problems for you. Didn't have anyone turn up to 2 of them. We had a couple of folks turn up to the last one, so that was a great opportunity for me, to kind of hear how people are feeling and questions that came up, and I think we had some good conversation. So I guess just a question, just wanted to check in with you all to see if you think that those things would be helpful in office hours, kind of an ongoing office hours would be helpful for you all. We're happy to put some time on the calendars, and if you feel like it would be a good use of time and a good space to touch base with OHA staff. Stan's giving me a thumbs up.
I have a follow-up sort of question on whether there's any plan to meet in person or not as a group.
Yeah, great question, Amy. We were just definitely have been talking and thinking about that. The state office building in Portland, where public health is based. And I think all state offices are opening September 1. So I think there definitely is kind of the ability to do that, and doesn't have to be in Portland. We could meet really anywhere in the state. But yeah, I mean, I think that is also part of the challenge here, right? Is trying to create these types of groups when you've only been connecting through these Zoom types of meetings, and if creating some space to be together in person, and for kind of like a half day type of feeling, would be helpful in starting to bring some clarity to what you all want to do together.
I'm sorry, Christy. This is Mark Conte again, Spanish interpreter. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to get some closure on the interpreter needs for Callie. As far as we can tell, she hasn't really been hearing or have been even participating at all so far today. Can we get some sort of closure on this so that we know how to proceed?
Yeah.
Was she connected to the Zoom? And Margaret has been trying to call out to her numerous times, but it goes straight to voicemail, and she doesn't pick up, or we're not really sure what her situation is. And we want to make sure that if she wants to participate, that she has the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. Thank you. I see there is one phone number. Mark, I just want to, maybe you can just ask in Spanish if she's on the line. And if she's not, then maybe we can, the both of you can drop off and we can follow up with her by email.
Okay, thank you, will do. Cali, ¿usted está presente ahora en la línea, señora? Tal vez en el canal de inglés o en el de español. ¿Está presente usted, Cali? ¿Me puede escuchar? I'm not getting any response, Christy. I made the announcement both in English and Spanish. You probably heard me say it in English, in the English channel in Spanish. Do you see her connected with the number?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. So at this time, I think if you want to drop off, that's fine. We'll follow up by email. I do know that she, Heather, do you want to, it looks like Heather's got some information. Here.
I received a text message from her with office hours Tuesday through Saturday, so I'm just going to assume she's not attending today.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret and Mark.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and disconnect in that case, if that's okay, Christy, okay?
Sounds okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience with that.
So I think we were exploring a proposal around bringing people together in person. Be great to hear what others think about that.
Could we get some thoughts from some folks about whether they'd like to meet in person after September 1st?
This is Jennifer, and I think in-person meetings are so incredibly valuable to build, community and just build relationships. I think the one hard thing, particularly for those of us in more rural counties, travel time is a really big issue, and so that can hinder ability to meet in person.
I am not familiar enough with the group to know where everybody lives. I'm in Medford in Southern Oregon, and I know that there's always with my statewide groups, the conversation around if we meet in Portland, it's convenient for most people, and should we meet somewhere more middle ground? And I'm actually totally happy to do either, just to throw that out there. I'm happy to come up. And if we did a half day, I would probably want to organize like anybody who wants to spend a little more time getting to know one another activity for making the drive even more worth it. So that's my.
Thank you, Amy. I like the thoughts that you had around half day as opposed to, so for those who have to travel, really making it a little more extensive meeting, perhaps doing some small committee work, built into that time so that it's actually a working meeting where it's not just, there's processing happening at a lot of different levels.
Hi, this
had a
is
couple
Connie.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, For us that live in Southern Oregon, could we carpool? I mean, I don't have a problem driving, but if we're going to have half days, sometimes it's a little bit better to carpool.
Absolutely. Thank you, Connie, for that.
You're welcome.
And then we have Jess and Timur in the chat that said yes. All for it. Let's meet up.
We do have folks on the committee in and around Klamath area, Klamath County area, Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon. I'm looking at my list, Siletz area, and then in and around I-5 corridor. So if that helps folks get an idea, we really wanted that wide swath of the state. And so it looks like there could be potentially an in-person meeting, maybe even to do a little more intensive work. I don't want to say intensive, not that we're not intensive now, doing some more thought-provoking work as a collective coming together.
I know I've talked a lot, but I have one more proposal around getting together. If the group of all the people that have to travel could be putting the doodle poll together so that we are able to maybe work together on what works for us, that would be super helpful.
Great. What type of advance notice would folks need? So my assumption would be that if not September, like October, is that a more decent time for advance notice of travel and preparing ourselves to be with people?
I think October would be really good. I think people's summer travel would be over and kids would be back in school. If all goes according to plan. And, you know, that timing might be really ideal. Also, you know, I think there's just like such a potential to really reinforce momentum by being in a room together. I'm all for that.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap that piece up. We have, I think our OHA team has a lot of good information from you folks. If you find that you had some other things that bubble up, go ahead and shoot Christy an email or anything like that about what that might look like, or if you had any concerns or thoughts around meeting in person and things like that. I would imagine that there would be a option to log in as well and have a video option for folks participating, whether it be a conference call. So it would be kind of dual. So for those who can't make it in person. So let's move to our next piece, and that's really looking at and reviewing and interpreting some of the initial survey results. I'm going to turn this piece over to Christy, and she has some of that information visually for us as well.
Yeah, or do we want to entertain kind of process questions first, New?
Oh yeah, please, we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so just to kind of summarize and remind, at your last meeting, you agreed to kind of get the initial conversation going around prioritization of strategies through a survey. And so we put together a survey for you asking for your most important, or the most important strategy and the least important strategy in each of the 8 implementation areas. And so we've got some initial feedback for you all to review. And you hopefully have already taken a little peek at it in the meeting materials. But first, we just wanted to kind of get some reflections from you all about how this process went and how did you go about identifying what strategy was most important or least important. New, did you want to use breakout rooms for this? I know we had talked about that, but.
Yeah, let's stay in, actually, yeah, let's do breakout rooms real quick. If you don't mind doing the breakout rooms, since you know you have the list there of everyone who's on the partnership. What we wanted to do is just give you an opportunity to really voice how this process went for you, right? And then thinking about how did you go through the process of identifying what was most and what was least important with the survey. And so we're going to break up into maybe 4 or 5 groups and determine, give yourselves an opportunity to share with one another, and then we'll come back and share with the larger group anything that bubbled up as an aha for folks.
Yep. Okay. I'm just putting partnership members in rooms. So members of the public, you'll stay here.
Mm-hmm.
All
so
right.
maybe, how long did you put them in for? 10 minutes or 5 minutes?
5 minutes?
5 minutes? 5 minutes is great.
Okay. Have fun.
Thank you. Okay, looks like everybody's bouncing back. Great. All right, welcome back, everyone.
We're still waiting for room 1 and 3, I think.
Oh, are they? Okay.
It must be deep in the convo. We're gonna.
Yeah. And Talk, I saw your message about not seeing your hand up. Yeah, I didn't see that. I apologize. Did you have an additional comment?
It was a while back. I think it was about meeting in person.
Oh.
And I didn't want to jump in or I didn't want to interrupt. It was just echoing what others said.
Okay.
The logistics will be challenging, but it's great that OHA would consider compensating travel time. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, in the old days, the partnership only met in person. It was less frequent. It was like 3 or 4 days out of the year, but it'd be a longer meeting. Kurt and Jennifer remember those days.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I believe all the rooms are closed now. Can I get one person from each of those rooms to kind of share back just some things that came up that were challenging? How was this process? What were some of the challenging pieces for you as you took the survey?
Looks like Rachel has her hand.
And I don't know who was in room 1, Christy.
I don't remember, but looks like Rachel was going to chime in. You want to go, Rachel?
Oh, perfect. Go ahead, Rachel.
Go for it.
Sorry, I was looking for my hand raise button. In our room, we talked about our strategy for answering the questions, but one thing that came up was that and we couldn't remember, I couldn't remember if this was the exact survey that we were intending on sending out to the public, but we were just piloting it first. No, okay, I see Christy saying no. The lingo was difficult for some of us to get through and really understand what the questions were asking. And so it took a little bit of time, but also our folks shared their strategy where a lot of people were looking for what they thought were going to be the most foundational elements, and then prioritizing those first, and then prioritizing least the ones that felt like they could be strategies inside of those foundational elements. So we had some smart cookies in our group.
Fantastic. Yeah, I also took the survey so that I would understand the process that the partnership had to go through. And I would agree with some of those observations as far as like clarification on what are you asking me here? What does this mean, right? So thank you. Others in any of the other 2 groups, if you were not in Rachel's group? Any comments?
It's like Talks, raise your hand.
Please.
Thanks, Christy. For me, and this was also shared in our group, it's a lot of choices, right? And I believe, was it Kurt who mentioned like it would have been great to have it clumped together, some of those things. But also it's layered. It's like, how do I decide, yes, we want to center race, but then it's like, oh, I feel like I'm not including healthy families, within healthy communities is part of centering race. So there's a foundational understanding one has to have, right? Even when you think about the other choices, I don't know if it was question 2, but like about payment. I wouldn't have understood that payment was important when I was still in community-based organization work, right? Now that I'm in the healthcare space, I'm like, oh my gosh, payment is like the driving force. But it requires somebody to really know the nuances and the language and the lens in both spaces to prioritize. So I think there definitely could be foundational education and health literacy for, I think, all of us on this call. Because I think some of us come with a lot of knowledge around one space and a lot of knowledge around the other, but to have both and to be able to answer this, I think it's challenging.
That brings me to the question of, would this group want, as maybe part of the ongoing process to learning, even offering like 15 tutorials, 15-minute tutorials each time, like on some of these topics? I don't want to say, and I just throw that arbitrarily out there. Like, would you want kind of, this month we're going to focus on housing in Oregon. Next month we focus on food insecurity in Oregon. So kind of giving everybody that kind of information. If you're not a subject matter expert in one of these areas, is that helpful? Is that something that, this group would want to explore? Amy saying she's loves the learning community. Yeah. Okay, I see you get some thumbs up potentially. And this might be a good question to ask a small steering committee, right? So think about that, because we don't have a steering committee yet. So thinking about how do you want some of these ideas and these thoughts to kind of be filtered to OHA staff to say, hey, I think the group kind of needs this, right? And right now, the way we're doing that is just as things are bubbling up, you are filtering that in Basecamp or to Christy or to myself or to Kara, right? And so we encourage you to think about, okay, what are you seeing as a group or as a group member that might help everyone, right? And so thinking about what a steering committee might be able to help formulate for this group to guide everybody. Other comments? Any other comments? Okay. What I'm going to do now, before we jump into some of the things that are more detailed pieces from the survey, I'm going to take a quick break. We haven't done that yet, and I apologize. We need a quick stretch break. So is it 5 or 10 minutes, Christy, that we usually take?
I think it's usually 5, but whatever. Whatever you need.
Does 5 minutes sound good? Let's do a quick 5-minute stretch break. And then right now I have that it's 2:07, so maybe how about 2? I hate weird numbers.
Call it quarter after.
Okay, thank you. Let's do quarter after. So 2:15, we'll reconvene. So go ahead and keep everything on. You can turn your cameras off, and we'll reconvene at 2:15. Thanks.
All right.
All right, welcome back, everyone. The next piece that we're going to do is kind of give you some, kind of insights on where folks landed as a whole. And so I know that Christy had already sent out those slides for you folks to kind of review prior to this meeting. And so I'll turn it over to her to just can talk through some of these things. Anything that questions that came up for you, please go ahead and share that with us.
Yeah, so this will be pretty brief. This was the results as of last Wednesday or Thursday. I think we did get a couple more people who responded over the weekend. So the full number of results is 12. So we can pull up the more recent results, but it really didn't change anything in terms of these high level themes. So the first question was asking you to take the 8 implementation areas and rank them in order of importance. So the way this came out was that people felt that equity and justice, followed by housing and food, followed by healthy communities, were the top 3 areas of importance. And I could say that also resonates with the themes that we heard during earlier community feedback efforts, particularly when this plan was being developed. In the middle, healthy families, healthy youth, behavioral health. Behavioral health, I think, is the one outlier here. Behavioral health ranked much higher when we did initial community feedback. Workforce development, and then finally technology and health at the bottom. In terms of the most important strategies, so looking at, for each of those questions, what is the most important? If I looked at the answers that got more than, I think these are more like, got more than 40%, so more than 40% of the responders identified these as the most important strategy. So this is just to give you kind of a sense of what was rising to the top. So within workforce development, the strategy around standards for workforce development. Within housing and food, building a resilient food system that provides access to healthy, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. I can tell you that with a couple other people that responded over the weekend, the strategy around increasing access to affordable housing also came up to the top. Within healthy families, the strategy related to childcare and caregiving came up at the top. Within healthy youth, the strategy around creating a culturally linguistically responsive trauma-informed multi-tiered behavioral health services and supports was a popular one. And within technology and health, expanding use of telehealth. So those were the favorites. The least favorite strategies. So these were the ones that fell to the bottom. Continuing enforcement of mental health parity and addictions law, maximizing investment and collaboration for food-related interventions, using electronic health records to promote delivery of preventative services, ensuring school districts are implementing K-12 comprehensive health education, increasing patient health literacy, and requiring that agencies and contractors use trauma-informed policy and procedure. So those were the ones that fell to the bottom.
And Christy, there was a question about what that particular law around mental health parity and addictions was. Can you give more information about that?
I am not a subject matter expert in this world. I will try and definitely look to folks on the PartnerSHIP who have more experience in this. But this is a federal law. There were several iterations of it, but basically it requires insurance companies to provide mental health and addictions treatment in the same way that they would provide and pay for primary care, right? So you can't differentiate, substance use treatment any differently than you would say treatment for blood pressure or something. So it's a federal law. State agencies are required to enforce that law. So within Oregon, OHA oversees the CCO compliance with this law. Department of Consumer and Business Services oversees private insurance companies. I think that actually is being changed. I think there was a bill related to this in the legislature. And yes, I will stop there. Please talk. Maybe you know something to add here about why this might be important.
No, I think you explained it really well. It just goes back to Rachel's question, right? And to what I said earlier on is like, when you don't have that context, it's really hard to make a decision. And then when you are given that context, like what you just did, right, Rachel, you're like, oh, well, this is so much more important. I would have rated it differently. And again, just since I've been in the healthcare space, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the piece, behavioral health. Like that is central to everything. You can't separate it out. Housing is not a siloed issue, right? There's behavioral health layered in there. There's access to care layered in there. There's culturally and linguistically specific layered in there. So there's so many components. It's just me thanking you for explaining. And then Rachel, thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, and just to give you a sense of the data here, one of the measures for this particular strategy looks at the percentage of CCOs who are compliant with mental health and parity, and it was only 33% of CCOs at the last report. So they have time to fix and address kind of where they were coming short. But I'll drop the link into the chat if you want more information about that. Any other questions or clarifications?
As I was going through the report, it's really interesting, but with 10 or 12 responses out of the entire partnership, I would wonder about the statistical viability of this particular study. And that leads, I guess, to another thought that I have, the partnership as a whole. We're of course getting our feet under us, and we're just trying to get this whole thing figured out. But I wonder, with that low a number from the partnership, that means there's quite a number that did not participate. So I wonder, why were they not able to participate? Did they not understand the language enough to know how to answer it? Did they not have the time to do it? Was not enough time for them to fill it out? But I almost wonder, the partnership, this might be time to visit participation, these type of surveys. I would be concerned if we go forward and make decisions based on this particular study when it's a very small part of the partnership as a whole. I don't know where that fits into what we're doing and all that, but I thought I would at least bring it up.
Yeah, I think those are very good points, Stan, and that might lead us into kind of that next piece for discussion today is really where are we at? How do we identify the next steps for prioritization? Are we at that point? Does the partnership feel like we need to kind of, redo this again? Because I think that was part of this was the first round, right? And so if we give you more information, kind of going back to the idea of giving you more foundational information around housing issues around the state, food insecurity around the state, behavioral health information around the state, will that help us to have a more solid grounding of how to prioritize or which bubbled up as important, right? And so kind of this next piece is really thinking about, what do you need to feel confident in the selection process? What do you all need to feel more confident in that selection process, in your selection process, if you will? And we can take some time to discuss this right now. That's our hope. We were going to have you break up into small groups and do that, but we can do that collectively so that we hear from everyone. Rachel, go ahead.
Thank you. I am sorry, I don't know how to find the virtual one. So, but what I would love to see is the disparity data underneath each of the priorities, so that we can see, like I mentioned in my other group, most of the folks in there were saying that they were trying to pick their priorities based on what they thought was the most foundational. And so maybe if we can take a look at some of the disparity data underneath all of these priorities, we can start to see like, whoa, which ones is the most glaring, and then start to make some connections between which ones do we think affect the other ones. So in my mind, the ones that we would want to pick now are the ones that would take the longest to implement, because now we have the longest amount of time, right? Like 1 out of 5 years versus year 3, we're picking something that's only going to take us 2 years, kind of a thing. That's how I would look at it. So either way, but more of the data would help me understand which priorities I felt like I wanted to work on. I also still feel like the the original idea of this is still good, which is we took this initially and now we're discussing it and we're all getting a lot more confidence and information about it. The first thing I want to do is take it again now that I understand things and I've processed with it. And then if we all were to take it again this month and then we came back next month and looked at the data and then we did it and then you guys eliminated the ones that we consistently said were ones that we were not really interested in. And then we took a much shorter survey to just narrow it down. I think within 2 meetings, we could probably get down to our 10 to 15 strategies.
Thoughts and comments? I see some thumbs
I
up.
agree with what Rachel just said. And I'd like to ask a clarifying question. So at this juncture, this survey has only been sent to the members of the partnership, correct? Not to outside external stakeholders?
Correct.
So given that this group was curated to equitably represent the state, would it be worthwhile for like possibly each of us to identify 5 stakeholders that represent the groups and the communities we work with and do like a mini expansion of it before it goes viral or goes really broad?
So what I'm hearing you say, Susan, is that yes, continue with the original plan and, you know, what Rachel just shared with us, like ready to take it again, right? And then have you all pick 5 potential community partners or individuals that you would want to have them take it as well, right? Before you expand offering it up to other people to take. Is that what I'm hearing?
So what I heard was the comment that, you know, there would be concern about the relevance or the validity of the survey results based on the small cohort that has responded. And, you know, being able to look at ways that we could expand that cohort in an equitable and relevant fashion so that we had a bigger group responding. Because I mean, even when we get just this group responding, it's still a relatively small group. But you know, that was just like one possible way of expanding the cohort size and the validity of the survey results. But you know, maybe discussion of other possibilities of how we might expand that.
What do folks think?
Or am I going down? Am I going down?
No, you're fine. You know, process out loud, right? Because if we were all in a room, we'd all be nodding and going, and then jumping in. So we really do encourage that. I know Zoom is like weird in that it prevents that sometimes, but we do really encourage folks to, what do folks think about what Susan's saying and what's been proposed? We can process together, right?
I think what I recall from the original plan was that we were going to take it a few times to narrow it down, and then we were going to send it out to the community because as is, it's too much.
How comfortable are folks feeling with that still? I know from the chat, a couple folks were like, yeah, that's the original plan. Do we feel, what I'm also hearing is that yes, and we also feel that there's potential to widen the group of to help narrow it down. I think that's where Susan was going. Add more potential folks to take this to help the group narrow down instead of having 20 people narrow it down.
That's a good summary of what I was trying to say.
So this is Kurt, and I was surprised to see trauma informed. I don't know the exact language at the bottom of the list, and it made me think of all the work that went into researching that in the beginning with the original partnership may have not carried over why that was so important. So I'm wondering, the survey, when we went in there, I mean, I had that previous knowledge, so I was able to remember what we worked on. But I don't know if there was a synopsis of information that carried over from the original partnership of why that connected to those topics that could show, that could show the importance of those topics and allow people to make informed decisions. I can't remember the survey, unfortunately, but I don't recall that. I remember looking at the list and picking out, prioritizing what I thought was important. But anyway, I just think some information there for each one of those would allow our committee members to make informed decisions.
Thank you, Kurt. Nice observation, yeah.
This is Esther. I just wanted to also, so I think Talk sort of spoke to this earlier, specifically around, so I took the full transparency. I took the survey earlier today. I meant to do it last 2 weeks ago, and then our office was closed last week. So I just was like, goodbye, everyone. I'll see you when I get back. But one thing that felt hard, or that was coming up for me when I was taking it today, was that things felt really pulled apart from each other. So sort of what I heard Talk speaking to earlier was sort of where's the, and I use this word like very, very carefully because I think it's overused a lot and sort of used outside of its context, is where's like the intersectional approach to how we want to do this work. Like, it's not just that we do equity, but we have to do like racial justice centered work in all of the parts of like all of this work requires that kind of framework. And so it felt hard to it felt hard to prioritize or like say this one is the most important. And it also was really challenging for me in the group I was in. I shared this to choose what was the least important, and I actually wound up not choosing the least important because I was like, all of these are important. But I think one thing that's sort of been lost in the transition from the past partnership cohort to this one, with the exceptions of the few people who have been in both spaces, is that I think there is like a bit of a lack of continuity. And then I also think that we haven't really had a lot of time or opportunity to build relationships with each other. And so I think a very basic level of trust and sort of just like understanding what people's frameworks and priorities are is really missing. Because I feel like I want to trust everyone in this group to, make collaborative decisions together where I believe that we all have our best interests at hand. But I just don't think that's happened yet. And so it felt really challenging for me to fill out the survey and sort of like, and to sort of temper my own feeling of like wanting to defend all of these other pieces. I was like, it's not one or the other. It actually needs to be all of it. And I would agree with you, Kurt, that the trauma-informed piece is really important. And I'm curious to know more about what the last partnership group talked about on it.
Thank you, Esther, for those really insightful comments. What I hear in those comments is really, again, reiterating that as a new group, we're still forming and norming and all of those important pieces of trust within doing work together. Then also I heard the need for kind of the continuity piece of where one group left off and where you all have entered into that space of picking up the work and continuing the work. And some of you know that, and so perhaps that has influenced you differently in how you approach things. I also heard the need to kind of come together and hear from one another, right? Makes me want to have that in-person meeting next week, but not, right? Not yet. But again, that piece of coming together and learning from one another, and then also knowing from which area that you work in and what your subject matter expertise is really what brought you to this group, right? And that piece probably may have been overlooked in the beginning of forming just for time purposes, because we know that takes time. We know that's important and yet difficult at the same time. Other thoughts and comments about potential ways to kind of move forward or prioritization? We have a couple. I don't want to lose the fact that it was proposed that not only do we stay with the plan to send this out to this partnership group again to go through that process, but then also to the point that Susan made about potentially bringing in others to this particular group to help us have a larger number of folks who will help pare down the prioritization. So there's a couple things that were important pieces that I want to state back to the group. And if I missed something, please go ahead, Susan.
There was one question I forgot to ask about that. I mean, if we did expand the response base, do we have the resources to aggregate that data?
I would ask that somebody on our OHA team to answer that, and then afterwards I'll have Kurt and Talk next in line. I apologize, I don't see the hands raised today for some reason, and so I haven't been catching that. So if somebody from OHA can answer Susan's question.
Susan, I'm sorry, can you repeat your question? There's something about disaggregating data. I didn't catch it.
Yeah, sorry. If we did expand the number of responders to the survey, do we have the resources to, actually send that out and then aggregate that data if we got it back?
Mm-hmm.
Because
yeah,
that's definitely a consideration.
Yeah. SurveyMonkey is great. We can look at the data any way you want. The other thing that we've done in the past with these surveys is to include the real D questions. And so we would be capturing race, ethnicity, language, disability. We also added questions related to sexual orientation and gender identity to the questions, so we can look at responses based on all of those groups.
Thanks, Christy. I'm going to go to Kurt and then Talk, please.
I raised my hand for the previous comment, but if we go out with the SurveyMonkey, Christy, we may want to make a Word version of that, because we could check on it, but I don't think SurveyMonkey is accessible to screen reader.
That's a great point, Kurt. And I believe our colleagues in the Office of Equity and Inclusion might actually even use a different survey instrument because of that reason. So we can do some research on that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Hi, everybody. This is Liz. I just wanted to let you all know that in terms of getting some more context for each of the strategies, prior to me leaving a couple weeks ago on vacation, I did record a video with some of that context from the subcommittees, because like you said, there was some intersectionality in among the strategies, and then also there were some strategies that kind of got combined, like in the process of just of you all are having kind of thinking about how to prioritize. The subcommittees also were thinking about how to prioritize, and sometimes they combined strategies into one central strategy rather than picking one over the other. So that is in Basecamp now, and I sent it to all of you, and you can see that, and it's broken up, just so you know, by each of the implementation areas. So it's a half an hour long. I'm sorry, because it was talking through 63 strategies, but that should also help you get some of that context. And then I did put the markers, so you can watch it in chunks if you need to for each of the implementation areas, or if you just want to find information on one of the areas, it's there as well. So I just wanted to let you all know that I posted that video in Basecamp, and hopefully that's one of the things that can kind of help you. And because I think it is important to understand the context of where some of these came from, how they were, I kind of went through a little bit of how they were debated, how they kind of came to be. So I just went through each implementation area one by one as fast as I could. Like I said, it did take a half an hour to go through all of those, but that is also there available for you now for context. This is the first time I've posted a video onto Basecamp, so if for some reason you can't see it, we'll find a link and post that. We'll post it on the web and do that as well, but hopefully you should be able to view it within Basecamp.
Thank you, Liz. That's super helpful. Excited to review that. And talk, please.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Just to go back, new to your in-person gathering, just want to add to that. And then secondly, I appreciate your summary of what Esther and Kurt and I brought up. Could we also make sure to add in there, because I didn't hear you say this part, was that education part? If we were to have like an in-person, I could see providing education about context at that gathering.
Okay.
Right, because for example, and it's hard when folks are vague, so I want to be really specific.
Yes.
If I threw out to this group the community health improvement plan that all of the CCOs are required to submit to OHA, would that land for everybody? Right? Like, we're in different stages of understanding in terms of healthcare, health plan, health system. And I think at this gathering, if we're going to really have it, I think that's just like such a critical piece. Because when we think about equity and we think about how do you include people, right? If you're not feeling like you know what folks are talking about, it's really hard to have a meaningful conversation. Like, I wouldn't have known about CCO 2.0. Again, if I mentioned, by saying that, does everybody in the room know what that is? There's money in that strategy, right? There's accountability that's required for CCOs to do certain things. So I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that we are all on the, like, have a foundational understanding.
Yes.
So we can even continue to have a conversation. I just feel like I can't contribute fully when I don't even know what folks are talking about.
Yeah, do we have even the right words and understanding of those words, right, as a collective? Yeah.
So just adding that piece to your excellent summary that you gave earlier when Esther and Kurt talked.
Okay. All right, we got that. We have that down.
I mean, I'm looking at you, Christy, right? When we're talking about the community health improvement plan, like, that's a big must. Do folks on this call even understand the magnitude of what the community health improvement plan is?
I like where this conversation is going, folks, because I think that's where we've probably have landed over the last couple meetings that I've been here. Just like there's still so much to learn, right? It's that, ooh, I'm excited and I'm not sure what I'm excited about, or where I should really be thinking and concentrating on understanding. So it's that kind of baseline education piece, right? That education piece that helps all of us to kind of at least understand even some of these things that we're referring to, right? When you take the survey, there's a couple parts in it. When I took it and my stuff has been taken out, I put comments in there saying, what does this mean? You know, and I've been working in the field, so it's like, what does this mean? So part of it is like that processing piece that all of you have to do, right? Okay. Christy, are there other pieces that you wanted to make sure we grabbed out of this group? I kind of want to move to kind of wrapping up our last 15 minutes together to see what else and where people are landing. But I wanted to make sure we answered some of the key things.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a fork in the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing a really strong need and ask for additional information and data and nuance and story and yes, yeah. I think there's a lot of knowledge in this group, and creating space for you all to share with each other the knowledge that you bring into the group. You know, we have a lot of data and story from the development process that we could share with you. So yeah, yes. How do we give you that information so it's not overwhelming and it's meeting the mark? How do we make that an engaging exercise so it doesn't feel didactic, right? And it's not just us kind of speaking at you when we know that all of you bring so much wisdom and knowledge and expertise in these areas. And how do we keep this moving? You know, the plan at the last meeting, and I apologize, we didn't get you minutes to refresh your memory on how that went. But what I recall is a very strong interest in getting additional community feedback in this process. And so we had kind of put together, we had put together a couple of options for you about how to keep doing that. And I think some of those came up today in terms of, you know, maybe doing a few like key informant interviews, looking to all of you to reach out to folks either with the survey or in a conversation about these strategies. You know, taking the survey again, taking a modified version of the survey to respond to the fact that, yeah, the survey is like really complicated and the language is, you know, doesn't really work for a lot of people. You know, we could also pause and really kind of dedicate the next meeting to nothing but learning a little bit more about this stuff. So there's a couple options. So it'd be great to hear which way you want to go, at least for the next couple of meetings.
Jess is saying yes to training. We're really open to where you all think we need to go. You know, there's some more comments about yes on training. Training / education is what I'm thinking.
No, I have my hand up again.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a lot of energy, so I just want to name that, and I don't want that to be what overpowers the decision. So thank you to those who are putting in the comments. Yeah, like I'm a big fan of education and outreach and health literacy, so I don't want that again to overpower the group. So thank you to those who are chiming in.
Thank you. So we have a couple things already potentially being offered even before the next meeting, and that's for folks to take the opportunity to review Liz's video. So we encourage you to check out Basecamp if you haven't already, and that's another medium to kind of poke around and look. There's lots there to, you know, it's kind of like that one spot in your files where you've put everything there. That's what Basecamp is, so don't get too worried if you haven't dived in. But it's a great place to just poke around to see what you're interested in, right? You don't have to look at all of it either. So we encourage you to use that. If that doesn't work for you, please reach out to myself or Christy, and we can find different ways to send that information to you if that's not kind of your mode of doing things.
Yeah, this may sound a little bit babysitting, so I apologize in advance, but I appreciate Basecamp, and I am very overwhelmed by Basecamp. And I agree with whoever said that they feel like not watching the videos on them. I totally agree. If you had like the top few things that we should be looking at or watching, is there like just a bullet point email you can send for us to do the education that we should be doing or should have been doing? That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And I think, you know, we can put out a variety of resources to you via email. I could take a quick tour around Basecamp if that would be helpful, just because there is so much there. Would that be helpful for folks? Just give you a quick tour. Can you all see my Basecamp screen?
Can see it, yes.
Yeah, okay. So you all have access. You should all have access to these camps, right? So there's one for each of the implementation areas, and then there's one for the partnership. You've been invited to all of these. When you go into, let's say, behavioral health, you know, they're all set up pretty much the same. The thing that's been most active within these things is related to the message board. So this is just a little bit more about kind of communication or resources related to the strategies. And just to put a plug, tomorrow, if you're interested in learning more about the behavioral health strategies, we're having that HTO in action. Encourage you to come. Those are recorded as well. So if you don't have time to join us tomorrow, we can share the links to those recordings. We did healthy communities back in May. So there'll be 2 of those that you're able to review. But looking at your partnership Basecamp, again, it's the same thing. There's a little campfire here where you can all chat with each other. There's a message board. This acts as a little bit more of like a email thread. So you can see here the strategy context video. There's where Liz posted the link to that video. Thank you, Liz. And there's other things on here that we've been posting that might be of interest to you related to chips.
You froze a little bit, Christy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me turn my video off. I'm joining you from Minnesota, my parents' home, and the network I don't think is as strong as it needs to be. Okay. Anyways, lots of things here, but let me just quickly point you to the docs and files, because I think this is also where you'll find some really rich information. Data. So I just put this folder together. This is a copy of the state health assessment. So if somebody was asking about data related to disparities within all of these priority areas, and this is really a document that really informed a lot of the state health improvement plan. So I encourage you to look at this. There's also a series of indicators, and I'll make sure you all have a link to that in an email as well. But that will, you know, a lot of those, most of that data is disaggregated. So if you have questions about that data, that's where you can find that. The other thing that I want to flag for you here is in the prior community engagement. So I think a lot of you are also asking questions about like the nuance in terms of why these strategies versus other strategies. There were 2 really significant periods of community engagement that we conducted when putting this plan together. Phase 1 happened in 2018 to 19, and this really informed the priorities of the plan. You can see specific feedback that we got from community-based organizations. There's also a larger report. I'll make sure it's in here that shows you kind of in a more aggregated style of how that feedback came out. Phase 2, this was feedback that we got a little bit more specific on the strategies. Again, so you can, as you want, you can review this document to kind of get a better sense of like, okay, well, what did the Black community have to say about this stuff? At least Black community in Portland. What did the next door, that's like a CBO out in the Gorge, etc.
So it looks like, Christy, we had a couple comments from folks suggesting that instead of sending out base camp updates on the regular, maybe just doing it once a week. So that might be one thing. So in that one email that comes from you on Thursday afternoons or whichever day we decide, that it just has kind of like a shortened list of here are all the different things that are happening in base camp, and that gives people the idea of what they need to kind of be looking at.
Sounds great.
So with the couple minutes that we have left today, what I want to do is thank you all for not only just diving in there and kind of working through some of those processing pieces that you have, not only individually, but collectively. What we're going to do is, as we kind of look at where folks are at, I'm going to work with the folks who volunteered to do the charter, to finalize the charter, and then actually maybe even utilize that particular group to kind of think about what might be the next piece, what we can do in the next couple months. I'm not trying to, I just want to move forward with you folks in thinking about what the August meeting might be looking like, and then thinking about what that looks like if we come together collectively. And so we'll fine tune a couple things. And so be on the lookout for additional information and the notes or minutes for this meeting. And if you have any questions or concerns, I strongly encourage you to reach out to Christy or myself in just thinking about some of the process pieces. If you want to have that discussion with me individually, that's totally doable as well. And I'll be reaching out to all of the members of the partnership to just check in to see where folks are kind of landing with our processing pieces. Because I think we're at a very pivotal point, and I think we're moving towards where you all are wanting to go. And I think that education piece in the next month might be really good, doing some of that continually as we work through some of these specifics. Do folks have any other questions or comments for the good of the process today? I know people are hopping off already, so. If not, thank you again for your time and attention, and to all of our OHA staff and the interpreters, all of you folks. And yeah, do reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks so much. We really appreciate all the good feedback. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Christy or New, do you have a second if I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. On the education piece, I just had something pop in my head that not often. So in meetings, sometimes I've had that like a lot of people know the content, so they don't want to be part of the meeting. So I was just going to throw out there that we've had like 15-minute segments that we just start ahead of the meeting time. And then when we do breakouts and talk about them, the people who didn't attend either had the knowledge or didn't want to. And so if there is not everybody wants to do education, if it was an offering like, right before something that could maybe be useful.
Like pre-meeting time?
Yeah, I've had a group where we do it's a half hour ahead of time is the education, because not everybody needs to attend. Like you might have somebody who just is doing that all the time, and then the rest of the group is trying to play catch up. So it's just a thought.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. Do you think that, I'm curious what your thoughts are about the office hours. Is an hour too long? And maybe we just cut it to like, hey, we're going to do this topic for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and then 10 minutes of Q&A.
I did not show up to office hours. I think I'd have the potential to show up more if it was that targeted, like we're going to talk about this for 20 minutes and then like I'm going to get a little education, be able to discuss it, and then be out maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, because with office hours and there's just so many different ways to do it. Like we leave it open so you come with your questions and then maybe a little more targeted topics per se, who knows.
I'm also wondering too if we did it like a half an hour, like by implementation area, and we could get folks from OHA, outside of OHA, who are really the subject matter experts in that work, and we could record it, so that if people weren't there. I mean, great if people are there because they could ask questions and be a little bit more tailored to what the needs are, but if not, we can at least be like, hey, we're gonna do this 30-minute Zoom, we're gonna record it, we're gonna have you talk about these strategies, ask you some questions, and then we're gonna share it.
Yeah. I would do so much better showing up than watching the video later, but it's, I think, good depending on who you are.
Yeah. No, hear you.
Being tied to things. But I think those are great ideas. So.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for that input. It's always helpful to hear what people are thinking.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're all thinking different things. So.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for your time, Amy. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Bye. All right. New, you want to, do you want to schedule some debrief time?
Yes.
Or do you have to run or?
I have to run by 3:30 and